All right, it is my privilege to introduce Austin Robinson, who on paper probably had the shortest job search as possible, but the journey was much longer than that. He's got a pep in his step. So if you don't have your seatbelts on, fasten them because he's probably going to get you riled up today. And that's what I think should happen today. So, Austin, it's all you.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Um, yeah, that was the nicest introduction I think I've ever had. Thank you. That was that was awesome. Yeah, team, it's good to see you all. As Steve mentioned, I haven't joined any of these meetings. I started working with Steve a week and a half ago or so, but I had delayed uh, this this uh, this opportunity to be able to reach out to LHH as I was still reeling. But yeah, I hope to be able to tell my story to you all today and give you a good idea of where I came from, my background, and then some of the things that I hope and as far as I can see led to my success in landing a job relatively quickly. I do want to thank you guys for being here. I know that this is not an easy space to join. I think that there's a reason why it took me longer than normal, to reach out. I didn't reach out day one to join LHH and ask for help. Yeah, it takes a lot of humility to reach out to a group of people for help and support. So I want to acknowledge that coming from that space of unemployment and uncertainty and anger, sadness, everything looped into one. It's a very vulnerable place. So I want to acknowledge that. I think you guys are all on the right track and doing the right thing. It's an important part to being successful is to working with other people in that success. So just want to shout you all out for that. Um, yeah, just brief introduction about me. So, yeah, so I live in West Haven. I haven't been on these calls, so you guys don't know me. Let me start from there. I live in West Haven, which is just on the border of Roy. It's off Midland Drive. You take the 31st Street exit in Ogden, and we live in one of the subdivisions that's right there in West Haven. So, other than that, though, throughout my 20s, I worked as a recruiter for the university system, which was Groundhog's Day. It was awful for a while. I did it to get my education done, which was great. It took me all the way up through a master's degree for free. Although it didn't make nearly enough money. My wife and I were pretty carefree and didn't have kids at the time. And so it made sense to front load my education at the time with the opportunity I had. Um, After that, in 2019, I joined a company called Entrata. Entrata is a software development company. They do property technology. It's a SaaS company, so it's good. I think Justin, Jason, there's likely one more who's talking through software development. Um, I think there's three of you guys who had announced that. But yeah, that's the world I live in also. Come to find out, I really enjoy just technology in general. But I joined Entrata as a project manager in implementation. So I worked with consultants, trainers, ultimately really large clients, et cetera, and moved more into the product side, working with product engineering, UX, and our executive team to manage really, really large clients. The largest client that I was managing before I was let go was a client that was worth $25 million to the company. So really, really big. The next biggest one, they were a military contract provider for housing for the Army, and they were somewhere around 10 to 12 million. So, enterprise level clients. And I love my job, honestly. When I joined Entrata, it was everything that I wanted it to be. As far as my first real grown up job, when I was a recruiter, I was working with high school students every day, so it felt like I never had left high school or college. And I gave presentations every day, over and over again. Three to six presentations in high schools every day. I knew that wasn't sustainable, but when I got into the workforce working in at Entrata, it was amazing. I loved it. The company had a great culture, and I really believed in the leaders and the managers that I had. They believed in me, and like it was that warm, fuzzy feeling that I hope each of you have had the experience of feeling when you're working with really great people and in a good spot. Um, and if you haven't, I hope you get there because it is. It was again, I really enjoyed my time at Entrata. Um, fast forward to February 10th, so just the start of this year. The week before, I was working with my manager. Our merit review cycle was up. He told me that I was up for my merit review. I asked him, when are we doing this? It had to be done by, I think it was February 15th was the day that it had to be done by. So I was expecting extra time put on the calendar so that we could go through my merit review. He said, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it. I'll put 30 minutes on your calendar. It'll be great." And so I was looking forward to it. I showed up Monday morning, went to my first meeting with my clients, and then jumped over to what was supposed to be my merit review, and it wasn't. HR showed up. There's a guy named Danny from HR who showed up, and they read me my last rites. It's essentially how it went. It was I was blindsided. Um, I while I worked at Entrada, I'd never been on a PIP. I had always been excellent in my work and my relationships with the people around me. I was an extremely successful employee for the 5.5 years in the amount of move up space that I had gone. I had gone from a basic project manager in implementation, which is probably one of the lower levels at the company, to really working with our executive team on strategy on how to work with these enterprise level clients. And so yeah, it was it was a gut punch, as I'm sure all of you have experienced. Uh, I'll get into some of the signs that I saw in a minute, but it's never easy. To go, like I had mentioned, for a company that I had loved and the relationships I had loved, those were all gone. I feel like I was treated like almost, and this it just wasn't the last day that I wanted. I was treated like the enemy of the state. All of my access was cut off immediately. While I was on the meeting. So all the relationships, people that I loved and cared about and who loved and cared about me, those were gone. I mean, absolutely gone. I didn't have time to prep. I had many of my friends' numbers in my phone, which was great. I could reach out to them on LinkedIn. I was blindsided. I was not prepared for my last day to be that day. So it was really hard. But I would say that uh, the thing that that I learned is like most of that was out of my control, right? I mean, I didn't have any control over it. I just had to deal with with the fallout of what my life was going to be, moving on from a place that I really enjoyed, honestly, working. Um, so day one was a roller coaster of anger and shock. I mean, I I tried to act in a professional manner, but honestly, there was a flood of angry four-letter words in my mind that I wanted to let out all over the place. I mean, just venom. I could feel it. There's venom coming from my mouth. It was a bad feeling, but I was angry. I was hurt. It was really, really painful that first day. Um, Second day came around and I was mostly just sad. I was looking back at pictures that I had of, company events and, accomplishments. And, uh, I like to be a prideful man, but I cried several times that day. It was really, really humbling. Looking back to where I'd come to my current position, which was, you know, no longer, it was gone. The loss was real. It was almost like a death in the family, considering my income as well as the life that I had at this company. It was hard for me. I've never experienced a layoff um, type of event. And that's exactly what they told me. They told me they were restructuring and they were laying off several employees. Um, so I never experienced that before, but it was extremely painful. But I will say that that was one of the most amazing pieces that I know supported me and really helped to turn my attitude around. I mean, I wallowed in it for about 2.5 days. I mean, as I think most of us do, it's hard to get over. But during those 2 days, I actively was seeking the last day I didn't have. I tried to reach out to all the coworkers that I loved and didn't get to say thank you to, and thanks for being a great team member and working with me and mentoring me, teaching me through my journey at Entrada. And so I did that probably that whole first week. I was on the phone more than I was at work during my normal job, just recounting, working with people. Ultimately, that led to networking, which was great. I really relied not just on that inner circle for love and support, which I mean, looking back, I needed that at the time. But I mean, there were so many people who were willing to offer help, give an idea of where to start looking for jobs, who to reach out to if they had any leads. I mean, that inner circle was amazing. So I didn't know it at the time, but that was probably one of the most mentally successful things that I did while I was early in my my relationship breakup with Entrada is what I felt like is getting over that relationship piece that wasn't there anymore. Um, Excuse me, give me one sec here. Oh, I had a cold a couple weeks ago, but I just have that residual kind of sore throat, raspy throat, and it won't go away. I'm trying to get rid of it. So apologies. Um, I think yeah, so I think that puts us in a pretty good place. Um, I I will say that that was one of the main points that I was able to focus on. And once I was able to focus on this realization, I feel like it became easier for me because it was something that I was very used to. As you guys don't know who I am, what one of the hobbies and lifestyles that I'm extremely passionate about is hunting and fishing. I was fortunate enough to have both grandparents and parents down both sides remain in the hunting and fishing world, and I love it. I grew up bow hunting, rifle hunting, duck hunting. I mean, you name it. Yeah, I came from pretty eager means. I grew up milking dairy cows. My family didn't have a ton of money, honestly, but hunting was always a way that we could put meat on the table, and it was a lot of fun to spend time with my family, and I loved it. Um, uh, I I think that that's where much of my resilience came from, though. Um, are there are there and I'll ask this as maybe a rhetorical question. You don't have to come off mute, but if there are any of those who have hunted or fished, you know how this goes, and if there aren't, I'll try to explain it to you. Hunting is hunting. It's not just killing, being successful, taking an animal. A lot of people think, hey, taking this animal is the goal, and while it is the goal overall, you're out there with a purpose. The hunt is actually the hunt. You have to learn how to enjoy the hunt itself, which can be really difficult. There'll be people around you who will have maybe less time in the field. They've spent less time scouting. They don't know the area. They show up day one and they're able to harvest an animal super easy. I mean, it's the stars align for them. You know, they could make the most mistakes out of anybody, and for some reason they stumble out of their trailer, and the animal's right there, and they're successful. Um, but that's something that my dad and my grandpa taught me, is that the hunt is what is the most important. You have to learn how to focus in on how to hunt and not necessarily just taking the animal. And so from an early age, I learned how to find water. I learned how to find where the animals were feeding. I learned how to identify tracks and signs. I knew what the animals would do if there was a weather system moving in. I knew what they would do if it was a dry season, where the most likely places to find water was. Um, all of those things to go to say that once I figured that out and kind of looked back, it was really kind of easy for me to be comfortable in trying to find a job. Because finding a job is the same thing. It is. It's really uncomfortable, and success didn't necessarily come easy, even though I think mine went fast. I started focusing in on the things that I needed to do to be successful, just like identifying tracks, finding water, etc. One of the things that I did early on while I was trying to find a job, if there was somebody that I knew who had referred me and I didn't get the job, maybe I had an interview, maybe it was my resume that I sent in, and I got that blank letter back. I'd ask them. I went to LinkedIn and just asked them. There's one case specifically. There's a cybersecurity company called Blackpoint. Really awesome leaders. Really, really cool guys. Interviewed with them. I didn't get the job. I wasn't ready. And I didn't know that though until I asked them. I said, why did I fail? Like, what am I doing? That's like, I feel like I've meet your job description, but still, this didn't work out. Why is that? And surprisingly enough, they were extremely kind. They offered kind criticism, and honest feedback that I needed. I had to be humble enough to take that and change some of the things that I was doing in the interview, or change some of the things on my resume, or learn other skills that would help me to be successful that I was just lacking for the person they were looking for. Um, one of the pieces that I'll mention as well that I noticed, and I kind of went out of order. I had written some stuff down, but I'm not I'm not a professional speaker, guys. I'm like one of you. I worked for really two companies, if you will, for the last, I don't know, 12, 13 years. And so I've spent, as Steve has mentioned, I'm not an expert job seeker. I'm good at what I do work wise, but I suck at I am not good at interviewing. My resume, all of that stuff is lacking, just like many of you might be in that same position. Um, but last year, again bouncing back to Entrada, I knew something was up. I knew that I wasn't in the right place. Um, I wasn't getting the opportunities that I needed. Um, I was on the trail, if you will, seeing that things weren't going to work out at Entrada. I just didn't know how bad it was going to be once it came. But I did start applying for jobs, while I was still employed. I was getting put on less strategic projects than I wanted. I was seeing less growth than I wanted. Being reduced from meetings that the rest of the team was on hurt a lot. There's a team of four people. I was included in them. Three out of the four attended. I wasn't one of them, and I didn't know why. I took it to my manager, took it to his boss, our COO, and really chased that for a year, and there was nothing. So, I knew I was on the right path early. I just didn't know that I was going to be terminated for it ultimately. Um, anyway, but again, I would attribute some of that just being just being actively aware. Again, that's very much so a hunting term, a fishing term. You're actively aware of what's happening in front of you. I was using that skill as well, even while I was employed, to know, hey, something's not right. Like the success isn't in front of me. I don't like this isn't working out, and here's why. Help identifying it. Um, let's see. So, uh, I mean, I don't have a ton of content for you. That's really where I had that's really where I had gone. Fast forwarding to the last couple of weeks though. Um, yeah, I mean, I was extremely blessed and fortunate. Um, I had made my post on LinkedIn, let others know that I, was hurt, struggling, thankful, but ultimately I was in a bad spot. Um, and I mean, I was very fortunate. I had one interview from a friend who popped up. I had a screening interview the Friday after the Monday I was let go, which was really cool. I think for me that was a huge confidence booster to say, "Hey, I'm still valuable and I can do this." That job actually didn't work out. I went through that interview process pretty quick, and they were just looking for something else. They were looking for somebody who worked more closely with engineers, almost like an engineering manager. I was not that person. I wasn't. I wasn't that guy. I've never been an engineering manager. I'm not a scrum master. It's not my skill set. Um, so that one didn't work out. After that, I had again that inner circle of contacts. I kept working that extremely hard. I had several interviews, screening interviews, and then actual interviews with other companies, which was really cool. Um, the job that I actually ended up landing, the recruiter, they had hired an outside recruiting team to hire for the position. It was for a software development program manager position, which is right up my alley. When I ended at Entrada, I was a technical program manager working in product, and it was right up my alley. As I started talking through with the recruiter, did the screening interview, it felt good, felt right. Um, I did my first interview, worked with the two hiring managers as the CIO and CTO of this company that's in Kaysville, and just really loved it. Like I could tell they were good leaders, for first and foremost, which to be very fair, I had been lacking that level of care in leadership in my last company. Um, but I know what that feels like and know what that looks like. And so I was really excited. Most intimidating part is they had me do a 2 hour interview on Monday. It would have been last Monday, a week ago. Um, the hard thing is, and for you guys in software, Jira, if you're working in the Atlassian products, Jira is life. Jira runs software development at your company. It's the heart. Um, I had a great experience at Entrada learning how to use Jira, had been certified, etc. When I got kicked out of Jira because I was fired, I lost all that. The entire database, all the epics, initiatives, epic stories, all of the things that I had really built my career around running were gone. And that's exactly what these guys wanted me to present on and show was my instance of Jira. And I spent probably 16 hours or more that weekend prepping and building. I built an entire database, initiatives, stories, user settings, going through putting together groups. I mean, all for you guys in software, all of the things that need to go into Jira to make it successful and show that you know how to run it and to make, a successful release. I had to go in and do it a weekend, which is pretty intimidating. I found out on Friday and then had to build from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday I had the interview. But honestly, the interview went awesome. I prepared the way that I was supposed to. I built that database. They were extremely impressed. One of the things that Entrada didn't have, while it was a full functioning enterprise company, we didn't use Confluence. Confluence, for those of you guys not in tech, it's essentially a database of documents and knowledge processes that you can share throughout a company. We didn't use it. We had a different tech stack. So over that weekend, I also had to learn how to use Confluence and download my own free version, create documents in it, etc. Um, so I really focused in on what the interviewer was asking for. And if I didn't know it, I was honest and I told my recruiter, hey, I don't know this, but I'm going to figure out a way to make this happen. And I'll be prepared for the interview to at least not come empty handed and show them something to help my success rate here. Um, so I had that interview. It went well. I could tell that it went well. They were happy with how it went just from their body language, the way they communicated back with me. I also got the other cool thing was my recruiter. He really wanted this to go through, and he was hand holding me the whole way, which was really, really cool. And I've never had that happen with a recruiter, but I think that he's been doing this for years. He knew that I was the right fit, and so he was my champion, which was pretty amazing. I've not had the luck of receiving a recruiter who I didn't know. This guy reached out to me on LinkedIn, who we fell in like, and he was my champion. He wanted it to work out and knew I was the right fit. He was really great. Um, I had to wait until Friday, this last Friday. This again, when Steve said that this happened quick, it happened really quick. I had to wait until Friday this last week for a finalist interview. They told me, "Hey, we want you to come in and present on Confluence." Again, this is a thing that I had knew nothing about before. In general, I knew how to use it. It's pretty simple when if you know how to use any other competing or similar technology that does the same thing or software that does the same thing. But they called me in. I met with these two managers in person, these two executives in person, and they offered me the job on the spot, which was pretty amazing. I was not expecting that. I had no reason to believe that they would offer it to me. I was one of two candidates that were left, and it was a battle. It was Hunger Games, and that's the way it felt. It felt like I was fighting somebody else who was potentially he or I was going to have a really bad day. And it was going to be, one way or the other, somebody was going to have a bad day. Um, the most amazing thing is though, is that these two leaders that I just signed on for, they told me that they knew that they were going to be growing and that they knew they were going to have to hire in the next 6 months to a year anyway for the same type of position at their current growth rate. They had enough awareness of what was going on that they could identify that. So they said, you know what? We told the rest of the executive team, we're taking the extra money and we're just going to hire both these candidates. They're the right fit. We're gonna do this now because otherwise we're gonna have to do this in 6 months to a year, and we don't want to go back through the process. We want people that are in place that are the right fit, and if these guys are the right fit, we're hiring them now. Um, my recruiter said, I mean, I talked to Steve as well. I mean, that doesn't happen. I mean, usually it's, budgets are pretty tight. And if you guys know and have ever managed, budgets are tight. You usually don't have access to get funding to hire two people when you have one job posting that's open. So again, the level of fortune that came, it's incredible. Call it karma, call it blessings, call it, the will of the gods, whatever you want to call it. It really did work out. I went from honestly one of the darkest days of my life, leaving this company that I loved to, within a month finding something better and leaders that I really believed in. And that's the true story. I think that each of us have that opportunity. There is suffering that's going to come, and given I need to call this out. I know that I haven't uh, suffered as long as maybe some of you have or will suffer. Um, but that suffering ultimately is a good thing. Even if I wouldn't have landed this job, I still would have kept that hunter mindset, though. I still would have kept tracking leads, taking down notes on the things I wasn't being successful at. If I wasn't getting close enough to a finalist interview, I'd ask people why and try to figure out why I wasn't being successful. I mean, that mentality wouldn't have changed even if I was, still in a position without a job offer that I had accepted. Um, so overall, I mean, I don't want to take too much more time, Steve. I do want to leave time for questions and just open discussion. Um, but that's all that I would summarize this with is, it may hurt now, but this transitionary period is just that. It's just a transition. It's okay to take a couple of days and be angry and sad. But the most effective thing for me, and that I think will help others to hear, is it just focus in on the things that are going to drive success, that you can break down anything. Just again, and this is back to my roots of hunting. I can break down tracking, water, food, all of those things can lead to success of an encounter with an animal to meet your goal. Same thing can happen with the job. Work with that inner circle of people. Reach out, set a certain number of applications that you want to fill out per day, and make sure those happen before lunch. Set a certain amount of people to follow up with. If somebody said, "Hey, I might have a job for you," and you haven't heard back from them, make sure that's happening that exact day. If you have interviews and you're not landing them, again, you have to ask the question why. Be humble enough to reach out to folks and say, I may not be the right fit, but why? What are you looking for? What do the other candidates have? Where can I improve? That may lead you on a whole nother path of discovery to pieces that you don't know about yourself, but you can totally utilize to be successful. Um, and that's also just again, I'll wrap it up. I don't want to be long-winded, but I think it's important that whenever you're on the hunt for the job, I mean, you have to be wearing the hat of an optimist. You have to be optimistic. You have to have hope that it's going to work out. But there's also a certain point where you have to tie on your boots of pessimism, and you have to walk and keep going as if things aren't going to work out. You have to be cautiously optimistic to say, this may not happen. It's not going to work out. I'm hopeful it will, but if it doesn't, that's okay. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to keep moving through this. And so, yeah, I mean, that's most of what I have for you guys. I hope that it's been helpful, and it's at least produced some thoughts or maybe things that can help you all in your job search. Again, my job search was relatively short, and I realized that. But I still went through all of the emotions, the highs and lows, the hurt, the pain, the sadness, the happiness that you would expect to feel for a journey. So I want to thank you for your time. I'd be happy to discuss or have any questions. Steve, yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
jump in.
I'm just gonna throw some people in here to let them ask questions, or if they don't have any questions. But first of all, I'll just throw people randomly, and they know that that's how it works. For those who are new, if you do not want me to call on you, put it in the chat. But Tony, you're first.
Hey, Austin, it's nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Congratulations on not having to endure this crazy unemployment thing. That's a good thing. Hopefully you give the recognition where that belongs. I think I'm the longest one now on the call for, well, I didn't see if Jared's on here, but I went 6 months of over 100 applicants and no interviews. And so you're very fortunate.
I agree. Yeah,
very fortunate. So
I've been blessed
dismiss.
Beyond recognition. I do realize that.
Yeah,
totally.
Don't dismiss that. But I do want to just congratulate you on that. I think one of the things that I got out of your presentation today is the things that you checked as success are things that I'm still doing. So I went through the same thing, 20 years with an institution, moved up, and went through all the emotions and still continue to go through those emotions, unfortunately, today. I will say that now, for the rest of everybody on the call, now is probably a better time to lose your job than last summer. The opportunities this year are just completely different than what they were last summer. So there is hope for everybody else that's on the call as well. That I think overall we're all going to have better success in 25 than we did in 24. Obviously, because I'm still here, but the things that you say resonate. The follow-ups, the reaching out, the connecting. I'm doing all that, and I'm still here. So appreciate your positivity. Congratulations on that, and yeah, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I can't underscore that enough. Highlight, bold, whatever you want to call it. I do realize how fortunate I was to have a quick turnaround. So my heart goes out to you. Again, I work with, there's a guy in my neighborhood who's been unemployed for almost the same amount of time, Tony. And it's hard having those conversations. I told Steve this is the part that I don't want to do, is because my success came super quick, and I don't want it to seem disingenuous that I know other people are suffering longer than I have. And so I do. I don't have, I can definitely empathize. I don't have the same level of sympathy. I didn't have to wait for 6 months. Mine turned around pretty quick, but I can absolutely empathize with the way that you're feeling and the long the long wait that it's been. So I appreciate you calling that out. I absolutely do feel that way. Told Steve, I was like, that's the part that I'm most worried about. I don't want to flaunt my success. I want to help where I can. But again, I do feel for those who have been searching longer than I have.
Thanks, Tony. And you know what? I hope this gives hopes to people that things can happen sooner for some. Liz.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi,
Thank you
Liz.
again for coming and speaking with us. It's awesome that this whole system works for someone.
It didn't feel like that at first, honestly. My head's still spinning. Honestly, I didn't expect it. I wasn't expecting. Again, Boots of the Pessimist was on. I was expecting for things not to work out and just to keep marching through.
You still cast that line, even though all you get back are just nibbles.
Exactly. That's right.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Good fishing term. Love it.
Oh, I love fishing. It's so much fun.
Good. And you're up in Wyoming?
Right now, yes, I'm a Colorado native,
Okay.
but we're up in Wyoming for my husband's job.
Where about in Wyoming?
We're in Torrington.
I don't even know where that is. Where is that
That's like
close?
a tiny little town close to the Nebraska border. So it's actually
wow.
closer to Scotts Bluff than anything else.
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
definitely a little ways away from Utah. I know the part's close to Utah, but
Oh, gotcha.
it just because we border each other. But that's it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I thought that was interesting that your previous company didn't use Confluence. Like Jira and Confluence, they're always like a sold package for that reason.
Yeah, and Entrata grew a lot from the time that I was first started. When I first started, we had 500 employees only, so relatively small. By the time that I was, Steve told me not to use the word terminated, but that's the way that it felt. Let go, restructured out. That all of the roundabout words of what happened. We had acquired a company in Israel, acquired another company in Utah, and acquired a company in India. Called Zento. And so we had over 2,000 employees working as engineers in India, AI in Israel. And I think that the reason we didn't move on with Confluence is primarily because of the cost. We were able to augment our tech stack to use the Google products to do most of what we needed in Jira and database documents, et cetera, there. And then we also used, we were getting into, I keep saying I'm not a part of the company. That's been a hard piece. I'll always say we until I have another we to join. I'm looking for, the family's gone, right? Like I'm not a part of it anymore. But yeah, Entrata was using another similar software called Guru that did the same thing. It was just documentation that could be stored and easily accessed, searched, just like Confluence. So
Okay.
the tech stack was a little different, but I think it was cost.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And it's crazy that you were able to just do all of that in just a weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and again, I've always been relatively tech savvy. This isn't the first time that I've had to pick up and learn something new. At
Mhm.
Entrata, I mean, I started out as a PM. We went from using just spreadsheets to using Workfront, to eventually me switching over to the product side. Again, releases were extremely rough. We sucked. I mean, there was no better way to say it. We were failing. We were not executing and not doing well. We moved to a thing called ClickUp, which is a small company it's similar to Jira, but it stinks as well. The
Mhm.
hierarchy's broken. It doesn't like there's a lot of development work to be done so
Oh
that it
yeah.
would work well across a large company. And then we moved on to Jira and things got awesome. So I mean, I did receive that experience while I was at Entrata. I was able to see multiple project management softwares, product life cycle softwares, because our company was growing and had to move through it. So Confluence was easier to get into because it just nests so well with Jira. I mean, it's you just like you said, it might as well be a Russian nesting doll as far as Jira is concerned.
Nice. Awesome. My biggest thing is because I was working IT, but I'm a bit more on the people side of it. Like I did help desk, sysadmin, some implementation work there. But really fight because I've been on the job hunt since December. I got doged before Doge really took over.
Yeah.
Doing IT sysadmin work for the government, for the FCC actually,
Okay.
before the government did its thing.
Did government things. Yeah.
Yes, yes, lay off over 70,000 people.
Yeah. That
um,
hurts.
but I'm thinking about more getting into the data analyst SQL side. And
Okay.
through your experience and going through all the processes of getting the job that you have, how often does that even come up?
It has come up. I mean, that was
Okay.
again, if you haven't done SQL or
Hey!
SQL, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, total nerd. I do a lot of hunting and fishing, but I'm telling you, there's the alter ego, the work side of Austin is nerd.
Nice.
I speak nerd talk when nerd talk is due.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so SQL, I would highly recommend it if you can get um, into an opportunity where you can learn it. I've had that come up in 3 interviews, and I mean, not I didn't apply for anything governmental, um uh but yeah, I would recommend doing it. I think it's extremely helpful. The place that I found it the most helpful, and where it may be helpful to you, within software development. I mean, if you know how to use SQL, you can tell what data is stored in what table, who owns what table. You can tell how often that table's used. I mean, there's so much data that can be pulled out of it, and then you can use that to form a story to make a decision with. So SQL is quite helpful for me. Um, and I was fortunate enough in Trata, while it was still small. I think it was my, my second summer, my second year, maybe. I don't know. It was somewhere in that area. They offered like an internal SQL course at Entrata, and so I was exposed to that pretty early on in my tech career, and was not good at it, but I at least learned the basics, and took the book, studied, went through the program with the others, and yeah, so I like it's good to know about, and it can be very helpful.
Mm.
But again, I've experienced that 3 or 4 times on interviews, especially last year when because I started interviewing in like August when I
Mm.
knew Entrata was not going well. Um, they asked about SQL and potentially the ability to be able to showcase that if I needed to. So
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Awesome.
So
Cool.
I would recommend looking at it. I mean, but even if you can, I mean, like, and that's the thing is like, I mean, I learned Confluence through YouTube.
Right.
Even
Oh, yeah.
it was pretty simple to learn with Jira, but I mean, like there's a lot of great information. And given if you've got LinkedIn Premium, I'm sure that there may be stuff that's a little bit more technically specific, and
Mm.
you have to have access to some programs that may not be easily accessible. But a lot of the stuff you can just see and learn on YouTube, and then you can talk intelligently to it in an interview if you don't have to show it.
Oh yeah.
I was going to say also, besides, LinkedIn Learning might have that. And I just found out recently that your public libraries make that available for free for you, at least in Utah. I'm pretty sure up in Wyoming there. Plus, each of you have money set aside for free training as being unemployed. If you guys want more about that, I'll tell more about that.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, I found a great MySQL walkthrough and tutorial that's about 16-hour class. Like the person teaching on YouTube is no joke. And
Yeah.
I'm about a third of the way through right now. But I was just sitting there going, how useful is this? Because I'm a people person. Like I was always the friendly face behind the help desk if you
Totally.
needed something. So I always enjoyed the people aspect of it more than just the analyzing IT gremlin working in the server room.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of those anymore. They've all moved to AI or overseas. So it's like, okay, then I just have to pivot and do the IT gremlin thing and just dive on in.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. I think that's the place I started off too. I'm a people person. Again, I had to work with high school students for 7 years. And so you learn to entertain people and carry conversations and have a great time. But ultimately that can only take you so far. There's a reason why most employers, recruiters, they are looking for soft skills, which Liz, I think that's what you have. But they're also looking for the hard skills. And to be fair, I have some hard skills, but not as many as others. And that's been another piece that I've been trying to focus in on over my career, because I know that I'm not a highly skilled person. I feel like I'm good on the soft skill side, but again, that's just another part of noticing and being aware of things that you can do to be successful, or focusing in on those skill-based opportunities where you can show and add value through a hard skill. So I think you're on the right track. I mean, it's good to pivot and focus in on those things that you may be less successful in now and make it a strength. So I think it's smart.
Oh,
Yeah,
good. Okay.
SQL can always be used. I mean, most software companies are looking for somebody who has any knowledge of that.
And the way it could be used, like I joined the SQL kind of website and forum, Kaggle, and they're always sending out like new updates, and there's people putting together projects. And the things you could do with those projects are kind of fun. Like there's one person who put together a whole like a faux database to play around with based off of the office.
Yeah.
So you have all the employees and their wage and all that stuff. And I thought it was funny. And it's like, oh, I could do that with like Twin Peaks or something like that, just for something fun.
Sure.
So you could do a lot of cool things with it.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Liz. So, in lieu of time, I usually, as people know, I'll either ask them or just randomly do this. But I have asked two more people. But if you have a question at the top of the hour, today's a bonus day. It's like a double hitter. So I have another person who's going to share her story. Hers was a long journey. It was not a short journey, and she worked 3 jobs. So we're going to get to. She's not here yet, but I just want to. If you have a question, I have asked both Jared and Dax, but whoever after that, I just want to. If you have a question for Austin, I want to make sure you can ask it. Next up is Jared.
Well, Austin, congratulations to you and your success.
Thank you.
Like you said, it's not like you're not coming here to boast. It's all about, sharing and networking and, sharing. You did reach a great opportunity here. So congratulations to you on reaching that. So that certainly by you presenting doesn't, present to us that you're, above us necessarily. We're just, this is just a small percentage. Think of how many people out there on LinkedIn. Sometimes my feed is quite full of people open to work. I actually took that banner down after 6 months, because for me, I felt like it wasn't helping me as a person. And that's what I decided. But I guess in terms of a question, so for me, I got pretty far with a company. So I'm in marketing, and I'm looking for a role, and I went pretty deep on an interview with LabCorp. Now I don't have clinical or medical marketing experience or even a background in that. Mine's been more financial services and insurance. So ultimately, I went to the final round. It was me and maybe this other person or two. And they ultimately went with someone that had more experience in that actual sector than I did. But I felt good making it that far and knowing that my skills could bring. So what advice maybe you have, and if you don't, that's okay. But what are your thoughts on, because the job market's been very competitive for me. Unfortunately, I've been looking for 11 months. And so the market is very competitive. So how might we in our interviews, because I've been able to identify those pauses or hesitations from folks when they share that. And of course I counteract with, yes, I can do it. This is what I would do. This is how I would learn. But what are your thoughts on we as job seekers to try to step into new sectors to in a competitive market? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is similar to what Liz was looking at. Um, Liz did not use SQL, which I mean, I'm more comfortable with. To your point, I've not worked in a lab setting, so I don't know what specifically is there. I do know that with many of those things, there are certifications that you can receive, even if it's a simple certification. I mean, and I feel like that was honestly the only part, my saving grace of getting this job was that I showed them that I took a crash course and, showed them exactly what I did and then had something to present and was prepared to show them that I understood the process. I didn't
Mhm.
go into the interview empty-handed. And I'm not, and given I'm not saying that you did, but I feel like that was a piece that was really successful for me because, again, there was software pieces that I had not used. The other candidate that I was going up against, and this is again,
Mhm.
same type of thing, he had worked for Atlassian. So he worked for this company that created these
Mhm.
softwares that I was just trying to get up to speed on and learn, that I was terrible at for all intents and purposes compared to the other candidate. Um,
Mhm.
but I think that that's what really won my interviewers over, excuse me, was that I didn't show up empty-handed. I came with something to show them that, hey, I'm hungry enough to go out and learn this. I get it. I may not be the perfect fit for this, but here's what I can learn in such a short period of time. For me, I think that made the difference. So I don't know if you've pushed that route of just of having something to share in those interviews because and ultimately they may just decide you're not the right fit. But I mean, I think that what you're trying to sell at that moment is not necessarily your knowledge base because you don't have it, but it's your initiative level. I'm going to take the initiative on this. I'm going to learn this. I'm in control of this. Here's
Mhm.
what I can learn quickly. And
Okay.
and and for me, I feel like that can be just as important to some interviewers more than the knowledge base. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I do think that there is something there when you're interviewing. And Steve, obviously you're the career coach. I'm not. I've not done this a ton, but I feel like that's a good thread to pull on is, instead of showing knowledge base, you can show some of that, but it's really showing the initiative of how quickly you were able to pick something up and the speed at which you were able to accomplish being certified in something you've not done, et cetera. Something more in that line.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for your comments. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Jared.
Congratulations again.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
And I think that's one thing I have to say about Jared. Jared, you are the guy who puts a lot of time and effort in the preparing and the organizing. I mean, that what you do is it's you're working for them, some of the stuff you're putting together to put that presentation together and 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 looking for their pain points. So that's one thing, Jared, maybe one of the times you should talk about how you prepare that. Next up is Dax. And we may be running out of time here, but Dax.
Hello,
Yeah,
Dax.
you actually might get some time back because my question was very similar to Jared's, and actually sort of like touches on what Liz touched on also, just because uh, mine was more specifically focused to like the questions that you got about software that you didn't know, like before the prep, before the weekend of prepping and stuff, because this is a question that I get a lot because I'm also in marketing like Jared, and everybody wants to know, oh, are you familiar with this piece of software? And
Yep.
it's, to me, they're all the same. Like in marketing, they're all the same. They're literally all the same, just like, it's like driving a different car. Maybe the windshield wipers twist instead of going up, but ultimately it's the same. But there's always a moment of like addressing that question and sort of like speaking to what you just talked about with Jared. Like, no, I haven't used that, but I can learn to use that. So, I mean, if you have any more on that, but if not, then we'll give
It,
Steve and anybody else
I,
some time back.
I would say, I mean, and again, I'm very fortunate. The recruiter that I was working with, his name's Brandon. Um, he gave me a lot of that information. I mean, he was really good at asking the two hiring managers, these executives, what are you guys going to do with my candidates? What questions do you have? What are the main topics of discussion, especially for that 2 hour interview? I mean, I told him, I was like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Most people don't. This is not normal. I feel like I get 3 hours of interviews spread out, 30 minutes to an hour each. That feels good. But 2 hours is a lot. So I really leveraged that recruiter, and this could be an HR person, a recruiter, to get me that information. I told him I want to know exactly what they want me to talk about, and so I can come in prepared. Because if they can signal to you before you get in there, and then you're just flat-footed of no, I don't have the experience. No is not the right answer usually. It's you know what, professionally, I've never used this, but I do know this is important to you guys. I took, again, the weekend, learn how to use this. This is what I would do with this. This is how I would solve XYZ problem with this software. It's really more around that. So, but I have had those. I've have had those interviews as well, where you're just flat-footed. You don't have an answer for them. But I think that there's ways that you can kind of focus in on getting that information ahead of time, um, before you get to the interview, if you're able to. It's not going to happen with every interview, right? Don't get me wrong, but if you can get that information, I mean, it's a golden ticket to know how to answer the questions correctly and be prepared.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Yeah. Um, I'll turn it back over to Steve.
Thanks,
Right.
thanks.
Any other questions for Austin? Jason?
Hello.
Jason,
Yes.
hello.
Turn this on. Oh,
Well,
I think
oh,
I
wrong
think
Jason.
I think there's a confusion of Jasons. That's never happened before.
Oh, did I pick the wrong Jason? Did you raise your hand, Jason?
This Jason did. I don't know about the other Jason.
Okay, good. Then I got the right Jason. Okay.
All right, good to meet you, Jason.
Well, the real Jason stand. Just
Yeah,
kidding.
well, the real Jason,
Just
please
kidding.
stand up.
That's an old reference. Okay. Yeah, well, there was one comment I wanted to make just because you kept saying, we did this, we did that, referencing the old company. And just let me tell you, that lasts a long, long time. Yeah, because I was with my previous company for 30 years, and I still talk to a lot of the people there. And when I'm talking to them, it still comes out, we. This
Yeah.
is what we did, even though I'm not part of the we family anymore. But the other thing, go ahead.
Jason, I'm just going to tell you, you know what? I don't think the we's ever going to go away.
I don't know.
I think I'm probably the oldest person in this group. And so I can speak from that reference. But, I spent a lot of years with one company. I thought it was a lot of years, 13. And now I've been with this company 19. And, but when I get with those people and we talk about it, we're back in that moment. We,
Yeah.
as if we're still working for that company because we were in it. And I don't know if we is ever going to go away. When you talk to them, you're back in that moment, like the high school thing, in high school, we did this, I mean, or when you played sports or you played music, but I don't think the we's ever going to go away.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to wrap up here in a sec. Linda's here, but we'll
Oh, okay. Sorry. But the other thing was, Just how did you said that you started interviewing before the layoff occurred, and what were you sensing or feeling? And do you think that they knew that, or they picked up on the fact that you were looking outside, and that may have been how you got isolated?
This
I
is a
don't
great
know.
this is a great question. I'll keep it brief, Steve, in lieu of the other
You're
speaker.
right.
This is a really good question. Yeah, I had been feeling. I would say that my unemployment mentality, of what I was feeling, really started a year before they let me go. This company had initially decided, and they told us that they wanted to go for an IPO, an initial public offering.
Right.
So they were dumping fuel on the fire. They were hiring everybody and anybody to make this beast grow, and it felt good. Everybody was in a great place. That really changed at the start of 2024. And I think that strategy changed. They just didn't tell everybody else that the strategy had changed, where they were looking for maybe a private equity sale, which meant that it was time to turn the pig to the pig to the butcher and start
Right. Reduce heads.
trimming the fat off. And so I think that that's where I really started feeling it. Is I was a remote employee. I had two people that were on my team with me, two coworkers, and then a manager. So there's four of us. And again, I noticed that I was being left out of information. I'd ask my manager why, and I would get a deferred answer, which really upset me. I mean, I had
Right.
gone from this family mentality where I was a part of the team to where I was not. Also, there were these product leadership meetings that were happening, and my other two coworkers who were at the same level as me, and some had less experience than me, were being included in these, and I wasn't. And I took issue with that, and I had an official meeting with my manager in January, and then again in June. Said, "Hey, I'm not happy about this. Why is this happening?" Again, deferred answers, run around, etc. Same thing happened. I went above his head, to be honest, because I wasn't getting the answers that made sense. Nothing made sense about this. I was a good employee. I should be there, with the other employees making decisions and growing.
Well,
And
it doesn't even make sense that they would continue to pay you and then
I,
not utilize you.
but I think that they already had, right? They had already decided that they had the budget for me for a year. I could keep adding value for a year, but ultimately, I think, and this is the
Past
other
that.
piece. Yeah, this is the other piece of this, is I actually owned quite a bit of reserve stock units in the company. And so I feel that that may have been a part of it, is they were looking to get ready to trim this company down to sell. I was a liability on their balance sheet. This is just my tinfoil hat, by the
Right.
way. I don't I
Right.
don't have
Absolutely.
I don't have any communication. Otherwise, I would, likely be visiting with an attorney. But I
Right.
this is just what I'm thinking out loud. But I think that that was a part of it. They had my value for another year, but ultimately they were liable if we sold the company to pay me a lot a lot out of pocket once those shares vested. And so they
But
anyway,
when you were laid
that's
off, those shares went away.
they were a carrot on the stick,
I know.
baby. That's all it was. So yeah,
Right.
ultimately, I think that that's what it was. I just started noticing that I was not a part of the in group. I was not being favored in any way, and I was being left out. To answer your question, I started feeling that from my manager, from my coworkers. I'd ask them questions. They told me I don't know why. So that was the feeling I was getting, is these guys don't they aren't giving me information. They aren't answering my questions. Something's wrong. And that's what really started, honestly, my unemployment mentality. I felt isolated, not a part of the
Right.
team. The whole thing started in 2024, not 2025, but 2025 was the slap in the face, punch in the gut. So
Yes. Yeah.
anyway,
Like I say, I didn't feel that. It was a complete shock.
yeah,
Except that the company had done layoffs before. That's the only real thing. It's just that it never going to happen to me. So
agreed. Yeah, and I,
yeah.
I thought the same thing. And it's hard. And ultimately, I mean, given I'm grasping at straws almost. I want to make sense of the way I was treated, but ultimately I mean, and that was the best thing for me. And given yours is different, man. 30 years I think it was 30 or 20 years.
30, 30.
That's a long time, man. I mean, that's
Yeah.
you've dedicated your life to these people who, threw you to the trash, the side of the road. And I felt the same way. It was on a 6-year schedule, but I had really dedicated myself, put in all the extra hours, loved what I was doing. Anyway, that's all to say. I think that what helped me to let go is that it was just out of my control. Ultimately, they were going to make the decisions that they were going to make, and it wasn't about me. But also, I knew that they didn't care about me.
Right.
And once I realized that, I was able to let go. But to your point, I'll still keep saying we, but I think
I know.
that we's coming from the teams that I loved and the people that I love to work with. It's not from the leadership standpoint of the people who,
Oh, of
cut my
course.
legs out from under me. Yeah. And so yeah, I think it's good to say we. It's good to remember the good times, but ultimately, the best and most healthy thing is to focus on small things and be able to work on those and try to move on because it's hard. It
It's hard.
might as well be a relationship ending, and it is.
It is.
Austin,
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I could talk all day,
that's
Steve.
okay. That's okay. Thank you. Is there any last carrot you want to pass on to the group before I end our recording?
No, I just want to just reiterate there are, I mean, me included. Man, I wish I could have attended more of these before when I was really honestly struggling, and mentally, I did struggle. I've dealt with mental health issues most of my life, and I can tell this is a good thing. So I'd recommend just to keep coming, keep working with people. Just remember that you're loved. There's a lot of people who love you. Um, it's hard to feel that when you've been mistreated, and if you've been let go, you do feel mistreated and hurt. But that's what I would focus on, is just focus on, there's people who love you, you can give love back, and ultimately you're valuable. Just because somebody else lost you doesn't mean that you're lost forever. So that's short-sightedness. That's what I would focus on. Just focus on the small things you can take care of and build yourself up. But, focus on helping other people the same way that you want to be helped, and it'll all work out.
Well, Austin, thank you. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks, team. Good luck, everybody. I hope you guys find something.